Well, hello, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome, everybody, to this Aries full moon meditation meeting and webinar facilitated by the Aquarian Wisdom Center Retreat. We just finished yesterday 4 full days of our first conference on the subject of European unity toward global unification. So thank you so much to all of you that participated. We also had our full moon meditation yesterday that we are also facilitating here today. This is an important, very important week, starting with the 3 festivals. There is festival this week. So we'll start with Philip's introduction, and then we'll have the meditation, afterwards a short webinar. Please kindly remember to keep your cameras and sound off during the meditation. During the presentation, if you want to ask a question, make a comment, you are welcome to open your camera or your microphone, or just write on the chat. So without further ado, I would like to welcome here Philip Lindsay. I think by now almost all of you know him, but in a short introduction, he hails from Australia, has dual Australian and British nationalities, presently in Portugal, and of course is very well known through his newsletters and books as a long-established astrologer, teacher, writer, both on the astrology and ageless wisdom. So thank you, Philip. Very welcome. And let's go.
Thanks very much, Natalia. While we're waiting for maybe a few stragglers, we can start to read a couple of things about Aries to get us in the frame of mind for the meditation. Of course, the full moon is in about 10 hours time, and depending on where you are, but basically 10 hours time, it'll be different times for different time zones. Aries initiates the cycle of manifestation. Hopefully you can all read the screen here. Is that big enough, or do it need to be bigger?
It's a little small, but we can read. Sorry, we can read it.
Okay.
Fine. Thank you.
Aries initiates the cycle of manifestation. All souls as individual entities come into human incarnation for the first time in the sign of Cancer, Cancer being the sign of birth, of course, emerging as mental entities in the sign Aries, as emotional desire entities in the sign Taurus, and as vital entities in the sign Gemini, taking then physical form in Cancer. It's an interesting take on the sequence of zodiac signs. Mental, emotional, and etheric bodies are represented by these first 3 signs, and I've gone into this many times in past newsletters exploring this. So there's always a sequence with the zodiac signs related to the physical body, to many different levels. There is someone with their sound unmuted, if you wouldn't mind just muting. And the Tibetan continues, this is an involutionary subjective cycle. Thus, they merge into the ocean of physical plane existence, into the world of matter. Yet the first impulse is awakened in Aries, for Aries is the place where the initial idea to institute activity takes form. It is the birthplace of ideas, and a true idea is in reality a spiritual impulse taking form, subjective and objective. Quotes from esoteric astrology, of course. Just a brief word on the conference. I was very gratified to see some of you turn up and join with the rest of the participants throughout the last 4 days. From all feedback that we've had, it was a resounding success. We blazed a new trail in many ways, and we'll have the harvest of that conference on our website. Some of it's there already, but the edited videos, resources page and so forth that will alert you about in future emails. So without further ado, we will proceed to the meditation. Change my screen again. And to stop share and reshare. There we go. And right. The usual meditation we use every month. And after this meditation, we'll have, I'll go into exploring some more about Aries as per my latest newsletter, which not all of you may have read yet. Right, is the meditation page showing okay? I think so.
Yes, it is.
Very good. Meditation, letting in the light. This is the 6-stage meditation that's fairly universally used, that most people are familiar with. And those of you who come every month are familiar with, of course. So we release the activity of the day thus far, taking a few breaths to just settle the physical body, relax all the muscles. Breathe into the silence. And we sound 3 ohms to bring about personal group alignment. Om. 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 See the radiant light of the integrated and aligned personality, individually and group as a whole. And we see that light merging the greater orb of radiance, light of the soul. 2 orbs move closely together and merge, becoming one greater radiant light, radiating outward in service to humanity. These full moon meditations are, of course, a service activity by all of us for stimulating spiritual forces in the planet. And so we link with all our group brothers and sisters around the world, in your country and other countries. We see a vast network of lighted triangles right around the planet. It's part of the etheric body of the planet. Scintillating and gleaming, this light pulsing through this lattice work of triangles. Linking with our group brothers and sisters and other groups individually. The whole planet pulsating with light. And so we start stage 1, group fusion. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servers, mediating between hierarchy and humanity. Hierarchy being the masters of wisdom who gather around the head of the hierarchy, the Christ. We sound the formula for group integration. I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Stage 2, alignment. We project a line of lighted energy toward the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart center, the great ashram of Sanat Kumara, and towards the Christ at the heart of the hierarchy. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy. And we extend the line of light towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Stage 3, high interlude. Hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. We are looking at the energies of Aries here and the first ray of will of power. And thus we hold the contemplative mind open. These forces, energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, endeavor to see the 3 planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. Stage 4, meditation. Let us reflect upon the seed thought for Aries. I come forth, and from the plane of mind, I rule. I come forth, and from the plane of mind, I rule. Stage 5, precipitation. Using the creative imagination, visualize the energies of light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth in prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. Light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet, becoming anchored on Earth. And so we use the sixfold progression of divine love as the sequence of energy precipitation, starting with Shambhala, hierarchy, Christ, the new group of world servers, men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, and the physical centers of distribution, wherever they may be. The sixfold progression of divine love. Stage 6, lower interlude. Let us refocus the consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram, the ashram of Christ. It contains all 49 ashrams on the planet. And together, sound the affirmation. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. We now visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and streaming into humanity through the prepared channel. Creating a pathway of light for the coming world teacher of the Christ. Whose symbolism is so potent at this Easter festival. Downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala, streaming into humanity. Stage 7, distribution. As the great invocation is sounded, visualize the outpouring of light and love and power from the spiritual hierarchy through the 5 planetary centers: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. So we visualize the outpouring of light, love, and power through these 5 centers as we sound the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out. May it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om. 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 We spend a minute absorbing and integrating these energies we have invoked. Restore the plan on earth. Thank you very much, everyone. Before we go into a discussion, feel free to share any impressions from the meditation, or if you just want to retain the silence and the serenity of the meditation, and that's fine too. This Nicholas Roerich painting I have behind me is actually called Shambhala, one of his many Shambhala paintings. Very evocative with the monks sitting in the mountains, the vast expanse of the Himalayas beyond, representing really the vast expanse of consciousness and those the rarefied atmosphere of the high Himalayas. Very good. Well, let us proceed with the webinar and commentaries and reading short passages from my latest newsletter, which started with the commentary on the Aries equinox. And of course, the Aries is the start of the new spiritual year. Traditionally, for most of humanity, it's Capricorn, the 1st of January, which quite often represents lower Capricorn in terms of the material focus of humanity, the after Christmas shopping sprees and all that kind of stuff. But Aries is the true beginning of the spiritual year. And Pisces, the previous sign, is a concluding period of tying off loose ends and before the new cycle starts in Aries. And Aries is the new impulse, the annually amended planetary plan. What do I mean by that? Because the hierarchy who watch over and guide humanity do tweak, so to speak, the planetary plan according to humanity's response to the previous year of impulses and inspirations that the hierarchy sent to humanity. And so they tweak the plan according to response, and the plan goes forward ever so gradually, almost imperceptibly perhaps, with some revolutionary periods at some stages where big changes take place very quickly. So this annually amended planetary plan emerging from the center where the will of God is known, Shambhala. In other words, Sanakumara, the great being who sits, if you like, upon his throne at Shambhala, also known as the planetary crown chakra, broadcasting the force of the first ray of will or power, one of the rays to pour through Aries, the first zodiac sign. So Shambhala is the center related to the spiritual will, which is not like our lower personal will. It's a much more rarefied kind of force. And of course, hierarchy are related to love, wisdom per se, and humanity to the third ray of active intelligence. Hence, the equinox of equal day and night establishes firmly the new cycle, like the wizened prophet plunging his fiery staff into the earth, announcing the new dispensation, kind of Gandalf-y kind of figure who makes this powerful announcement. Of course, Aries is a sign of great power, with the first ray of willpower coming through it, but also Mars as one of the distributors of the first ray that comes through Aries. Planetary rulers of Aries are distributing the energy coming through it, which is also that of the seventh ray of ceremonial order or magic, the ray that is coming into incarnation now with greater rapidity and strength. This goes for all the signs, of course. The rays that come through that sign are distributed by the planetary rulers. So the equinox preceded the Aries new moon back around the 21st of March, less than 24 hours later, magnifying the potency of the equinox and preparing for the Aries full moon festival of Easter 14 days later, which is tomorrow, depending on where you are. And Aries is a fire sign ruled by the god of war, Mars. Aries is the warrior, whether Aries is wielding a sword in ancient Sparta. Think that movie 300, the Spartans defending, holding a machine gun in Ukraine or Somalia, or the warrior of light who holds the line on the inner planes where inner causes precede outer effects. One of the things with esotericism, occultism, if you like, it's all about understanding subjective causes behind the outer effects. The outer effects are really maya, illusion in many ways. As the Buddha often says, it's the subjective inner causes that is the real. Aries rules the head, and quite often Aries people are headstrong, impulsive. But that impulsiveness also comes from Mars being the ruler of the solar plexus. It's an emotional impulsiveness. It's not necessarily, it isn't, in fact, true thought per se. It's Kama Mana's desire mind. So the emotion creates the impulsiveness. It's okay to follow an impulse, but impulsiveness is a different thing, of course. Just like judgment versus judgmentalism, for instance. So fire, of course, is a symbol of the mind. And just as water is a symbol of the emotions, as I often emphasize. And fire has a close association with the mental plane and ideation, the process of creating ideas, creative ideation. The mental body, the gateway to the mental body, of course, is the throat chakra. And this is where ideation takes place. Mercury, as the esoteric ruler, reflects this mental process, but also represents the intuition or direct knowledge. Mercury is the messenger of thought or intuition from the higher realms to the lower mind. And hence Mercury rules the intuition, higher mind, and lower mind. So when we say, I come forth from the plane of mind and I rule, we're talking Mercury. Humanity is going through many battles today, one of which is between the warring pairs of opposites upon the mental plane. We explored this during the conference. The battle for free thinking and the speech that clothes thought is a fundamental right and primary tenet of FDR's four freedoms, as I often re-emphasize in my newsletters, because of the fact that the last few years has seen a considerable diminishment of those freedoms, and we must fight back for them. They were hard won in the first place. They cannot be diminished. They must be reclaimed. And hence, we as Aries warriors must, as William Blake said further on down here, we must not cease from mental fight, nor shall our swords sleep in our hands. We must remain vigilant, on guard. Standing on guard in this long night of the Kali Yuga that we're passing through. The battlefield upon the mental plane is where the propaganda war continues, attempting to insidiously shape human thinking, projected through the astral plane via lies and deceptions, subverting and confusing thought, creating endless distractions. Aries ruler Mars, along with Neptune, rule the astral plane or the astral body, where so much distortion occurs, especially aided by Neptune's lower expression as it currently passes through Pisces. So, invoking the image of the Tibetan wisdom deity that you can see here, Manjushri, the potent visualization for Aries, with fiery sword, becoming the Aries warrior, cutting through spiritual materialism and discerning the truth. Blade of that sword is all about discernment. Viveka, as it's called in the Hindu tradition, discrimination. And of course, I do believe I can see flames coming from the top of that sword. Yes, fiery sword. It's a wonderful, prevalent symbol in Tibetan Buddhism. And of course, this is partly why the monks wear orange robes, orange being the symbol of the fifth ray, or the color of the fifth ray, and the mental plane of the fire, the orange fire. And in the monasteries, the monks are taught how to debate and dialogue, have a dialectic. They develop this discrimination, this viveka. It's part of their training and a wonderful tradition that is preserved, of course, to this day all around the world. Of course, Manjushri is surrounded by lotuses. So, the conference, to mention the fact of, we started the conference on April Fool's Day, which was a coincidence determined by juggling logistics of the timetable and the full moon and all that kind of stuff. But it turned out, I think, to be a good, very good symbol to burn into our consciousness. The full tarot card, most symbolic of the solar hero's journey into the unknown. The sun is exalted in Aries, so the solar hero is very much Aries. And this Fool is the first card in the major arcana of the tarot deck, representing new beginnings, opportunities, and trailblazing initiatives. Yes, this is Aries, the first zodiac sign that channels the first ray of will or power that initiates the spiritual year. So all that we bring to this full moon period in terms of our thoughts, our reorientation, if you like, because the New Year's Day is like the New Year's resolutions back in January, but also even more so spiritually during Aries. What are our New Year's resolutions for Aries? And so the Fool is also the jester and the trickster, and this is Mercury, well known as the trickster in mythology, in astrology. The esoteric ruler of Aries, as I said before, more well known for his exoteric rulership of tricky Gemini. Of course, his discrimination and discernment is mirrored by his rulership also of Virgo, the most discriminating sign of the zodiac. The Tibetan often tells us through, in the book Esoteric Astrology, to follow the rulerships of planets through the various signs, Mercury, and for instance, being the exoteric ruler of Gemini and Virgo, the esoteric ruler of Aries, the hierarchical or highest ruler of Scorpio, and connect the dots in consciousness, so to speak, in terms of the expression of that planet in each sign. There could be many, many books written about this, and no doubt there will be in the ensuing centuries, because it will take centuries to really explore and to do justice to all that DK has given us in his books. And of course, even The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky still has not been done justice, I think. I try to do so in terms of my book, The Hidden History of Humanity, which is now called The Undone Genesis, Mysteries of the Root Races and Cycles. So this lovely quote from this author here: the hero's journey begins with the fool. He walks blithely along, not looking where he's going, and completely unaware he's about to step over the edge of a precipice. As I think most of you can see in this picture, beautiful tarot card picture there. He carries his past in a bag on a stick, and you can see it's a small bag, so he's not carrying too much baggage, so to speak, from the past, which is important, of course, because we do schlep, to use a Jewish word, a lot of baggage from lifetime to lifetime with us, do we not? And it weighs us down, and we have to jettison or get rid of the stuff, put it in a psychic garage sale, so to speak. In his other hand is a small white flower, and a dog follows at his heels. This is the archetype of the wise fool whose lack of worldly experience appears to put him at a disadvantage, but it means his mind is open to another level of consciousness, whether he realizes it or not. He lives on the edges of life and society, hence the precipice that he's almost about to step off here. Where was I? And goes his own way regardless of what others think. And this is important in terms of the identity factor of Aries. The sun being exalted in Aries relates to the identity, the emerging self, so to speak. That identity, of course, can be at the personality level and also at a higher soul level. What is your soul identity? He lives, the wise fool is the holy fool or divine child, a lunatic who hides genius within his madness, an eccentric. And we all know a few of those, don't we? Maybe we are one. Speak for yourself, I hear someone say. So the fool is also the archetype of the green man. You can see he's dressed up in the green man clothes. He's got the deer's antlers on his head. He represents the start of a new cycle, new life, and fresh beginnings. He has the innocent spirit of a child who doesn't understand the dangers of the world he's about to enter. In some cards, the fool is shown following a butterfly. This represents his intuition, leading him towards enlightenment, but first he must take a plunge into the abyss at his feet. So many beautiful associations with this symbolism. And Catherine says Russell Brand comes to mind with the full symbology. Indeed, Russell is a Gemini, and I've written a couple of pieces about him that you can find on my website. Gemini with strong Libra rising, in fact. Both of them air signs. And he can speak at 1,000,000 miles an hour, as many Geminis can. Very rapid in thought and speech. So the butterfly where the butterfly represents the intuition, the childlike naivety of Aries is also prominent in Mercury-ruled Gemini, third of the three major annual spiritual festivals. And Russell Brand has that. Great example of that. Also, Jordan Peterson, who Brand has had on his interviews, is a Gemini, and they get on like a house on fire. A rapid exchange of ideas. I think Jordan Peterson's got some strong Aries too, from memory. So this naivety is related to the heart. It's related to the thymus gland, the endocrine gland associated with the heart. That's that childhood innocence that we often get beaten out of us by our culture right about the age of 7 onwards, and we spend the rest of our life trying to reclaim it. The innocence of a child, without all the layers of stuff that we accumulate throughout our lives. We've got to keep on shedding these layers to keep ourselves young, so to speak. And indeed, I know Geminis who are in their 70s and 80s, and they do retain that childlike innocence. Anyway, we're talking about Aries, which is a similar sign. So Aries initiates the cycle. Taurus consolidates upon it at the Wesak festival coming up in 4 weeks' time. And Gemini distributes and communicates. A bit of a typo there. I said Gemini twice, but Gemini distributes that which has been initiated and consolidated upon in Taurus. Initiated in Aries, consolidated upon in Taurus. Gemini is the distributor, the disseminator. Where the butterfly represents the intuition, we see Mercury in its highest expression of the Buddhic principle, the intuition or direct knowledge. And re-quoting from above, his mind is open to another level of consciousness. The butterfly is also the triumphant expression of beauty and balance achieved through the previous stages of metamorphosis, from caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly. From human incarnate experience upon the zodiacal mutable cross, thousands of lifetimes of testings and trials, bringing harmony from conflict of transformation within the chrysalis upon the fixed cross to release and liberation upon the cardinal cross. And this liberation word relates to the fourth initiation, which I'm going to discuss in a minute. But before I go on, I welcome any comments or questions, clarifications on our group today. Well, we can address those things as they appear in the chat feed. This beauty and balance theme is also represented by Aries' polar opposite, Libra, the balance, ruled by Venus, the goddess of beauty and art. Of course, Venus as the ruler of Libra is the perfect counterbalance to Mars as the ruler of Aries. Here you have Venus and Mars, their unification, the exchange of sexual energy and at one level, and consciousness at another level. Mars being a so-called non-sacred planet, Venus being a sacred planet. Venus, the ruler of the fifth ray, it creates harmony and beauty on the mental plane. Venus, the esoteric ruler of Gemini too, by the way. Another typo here, it should say through. Through playing pranks and fooling others in a playful way, we are reminded of how illusory the world of Maya can be, of how appearances can be deceptive, of how we are called upon to exercise discrimination constantly. In this respect, it is said that Mercury, the divine messenger, is the principle of illusion. So, April Fool's Day has its roots going a long way back to festivals such as Hilaria, Latin for joyful, as in hilarious. Maybe that's linked to the Master Hilarion, I don't know. The Shohan for the fifth ray. which was celebrated in ancient Rome at the end of March, just before April, by followers of the cult of Cybele. It involved people dressing up in disguises and mocking fellow citizens and even magistrates. It was said to be inspired by the Egyptian legend of Isis, Osiris, and Seth. Of course, Isis relating to Virgo, also to the star Sirius. And so we have this somewhat of a bacchanalia kind of festival here in this picture. There's also speculation that April Fool's Day was tied to the vernal equinox, or first day of spring in the northern hemisphere, when Mother Nature fooled people with changing, unpredictable weather. We all know what that's like, don't we? We get summer, winter, spring, autumn, all in a few weeks' time sometimes. In modern times, people have gone to great lengths to create elaborate April Fool's Day hoaxes and pranking and so forth. Newspapers, radio and TV stations and websites have participated in the April 1 tradition of reporting outrageous fictional claims that have fooled their audiences. With the propaganda so rife upon the planet, it's almost like April Fool's Day is every day these days. So again, we come back to this principle of discrimination that Mercury, the esoteric ruler of Aries, is associated with. The phrase dressing up in disguises and mocking fellow citizens and even magistrates is a reminder of similar festivals at the Saturnalia during Capricorn, another sign of the cardinal cross, discussed here in the Capricorn 2023 newsletter. The mention of Cybele is illustrative of the raw primordial essence of Aries and spring, where new life surges forth, the sap rises in the trees, and nature's mating season begins, symbolized by the fertile ram and its ruler Mars. We have Cybele here, one of her depictions. She looks very much like the Virgo archetype, does she not? She's holding a sheaf of wheat in her hands. And indeed, later, as Blavatsky tells us, Cybele, the many-breasted goddess, the personification and type of the vital essence, whose source was located by the ancients between the earth and the starry sky, and who was regarded as the very fons vitae of all that lives and breathes, the fons vitae, the fountain of life. The mountain air being placed nearer to that fount fortifies health and prolongs man's existence. Hence, Cybele's life as an infant is shown in her myth as having been preserved on a mountain. Animal magnetism was the principal agent in the theurgic mysteries, as also in the Asclepiae, the healing temples of Asclepius, where the patients once admitted were treated during the process of incubation magnetically during their sleep. So this reminds us of the essential essence that Blavatsky discusses elsewhere in the teachings. The plasma of Aquarius, for instance, as well. So apparently later, Cybele became Ceres Demeter, the major archetype for Virgo, Mercury ruled Virgo. Although she could be associated with the feminine Taurus and Mother Cancer as well, but the key factor here is the association of Aries with the vital essence or prana. That's what we experience in spring, this prana that has been somewhat hidden in the earth during winter, that is coming out of the ground again and energizing the whole of the northern hemisphere in springtime. The whole of the planet, of course, but we're looking at the Aries in terms of northern hemisphere symbolism of the seasons. Right. The black stone sacred to Cybele was taken from her temple and brought to the river to be cleansed. Dancing and singing crowds accompanied this joyous flower deck procession. I have a section here in Mars and Cancer, just worth touching upon. I'm not going to read it all, but whenever the sun is in any particular sign every year as it passes through it, for 1 month or so, it's always qualified by that sign's ruler and where that ruler is. And in Mars's case, at this point, it's going to be in Cancer, all the way to almost to the end of Taurus. So for a couple of months. And Mars in Cancer is not an easy position. You have the god of war in a water sign. And of course, the Mars being the ruler of the solar plexus, Cancer being a sensitive emotional sign, combination of both can create a lot of volatility, reactivity, and some difficult situations with regard to Cancer themes, such as the home, the family, the mother, or being a mother. In the old-fashioned textbooks of astrology, they say that Mars in Cancer on the natal chart is the handy man or woman who straps on the tool belt and goes around the house fixing up stuff. Mars being the ruler of sharp tools and instruments, of course, and the house being a classic Cancer symbol. So bear this in mind over the full moon, because the full moon, of course, really exaggerates and amplifies our feeling nature anyway, and our spiritual nature, of course, and for the world as a whole. Certain incidents you may see in the newspapers of shocking sort of Mars murders and attacks and things like that can quite often happen as a result of that energy bursting out. So a fairly in-depth exploration there of Mars and Cancer. And Michael Robbins's quote here I have too, which is worth a read, from his book. I think it's from Tapestry of the Gods, might be another one of his books, I'm not quite sure, but they're all available at the Makara.us website for free download, PDF and so forth. All right, so no other comments or questions so far from our humble little group that we have today. So this main part of the newsletter I want to focus on somewhat, being Easter. Of course, we're all going to be connecting with families this weekend, many of us anyway, as we do at Christmas. So the tradition at Easter, particularly in strong Catholic countries or Christian countries, it's the great Western festival, but it's called Easter, as in East. The festival of Easter, DK tells us, is the festival of the risen, living Christ, the teacher of all men and the head of the spiritual hierarchy. He is the expression of the love of God. On this day, the spiritual hierarchy which he guides and directs will be recognized, and the nature of God's love will be emphasized. The festival is determined always by the date of the first full moon of spring, and is the great Western and Christian festival. Christ, the Avatar, who inaugurated the age of Pisces, worked through his disciple Jesus, who was crucified and scapegoated upon the cross, and was an exemplar of the Piscean virtues of forgiveness, selflessness, sacrifice, and salvation, taking on, absorbing, and raising up human karma. And we recall that famous saying, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And so there was a unique relationship that DK tells us about in the Blue Books between the Christ and Jesus. Jesus gave over his body consciously for the last 3 years of his ministry to the Christ to inhabit. there was a dual thing going on here with Christ, a much higher initiate, of course, around the 6th degree, and Jesus taking the 4th initiation, also known as liberation or the crucifixion. So an extraordinary. That's why they say Jesus the Christ, and the terms are interchangeable. Can be confusing to the lay person. And we have this wonderful picture here by George Cornelius, called The Temptation of Christ. Very haunting picture. Of course, many of the Renaissance artists did endless depictions of Jesus, some of them most sublime. So sacrifice comes from seker, to make holy that which is in truth, that which in truth happens to the initiate. He's made holy, he's set apart. So through the last 3 years of his ministry, overshadowing his disciple Jesus, the Christ brought humanity to a new level, elevating and transmuting via the second ray of love, wisdom, principle. A new commandment I give you, so I have loved you, you also love one another. Easier said than done, is it not? We know that the tests and travail of working with others, group work, personality clashes, as we all are imperfect, and of course Jesus himself experienced in the Garden of Gethsemane, his closest, his nearest and dearest disciples going to sleep on him. So the Shambhala force is associated with the Aries and the first ray of will or power, was demonstrated 2,000 years ago when the Christ, quote, the Christ for the first time anchored on earth a tenuous thread of the divine will as it issued from the Father's house, which of course is Shambhala. I go to the Father means going to the monad or to Shambhala, passed into the understanding custody of the kingdom of God through the medium of the Christ, was brought to the attention of mankind. Christians are apt to forget that the crisis in the final hours of the Christ was not those spent upon the cross, but during those spent in the Garden of Gethsemane, when his will, in agony and almost despair, was submerged in that of the Father. He said, "Not my will, but thine be done." He also said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" as he stood or hung pendant between heaven and earth. And here we have this amazing painting by Paolo Veronese called Agony in the Garden, supported by an angel, an archangel of some kind. Just the most glorious colors in this painting, and the most sublime conveyance of this agony, I think. And you can see dimly in the background the disciples who are asleep here, back in the trees there. Veronese was one of the leading lights or initiates during the Italian Renaissance, since becoming a master of wisdom, in fact a Chohan, known as the Venetian, the Chohan or custodian of the third ray of active intelligence. Not much is known about the Venetian. But if we explore so many of these initiates in the Renaissance period, Da Vinci, Raphael, and all the various families at the time, incredible incarnation of many initiates from the golden age of Greece, in fact, all reincarnating together once again. And so we recall that during that long bitter night in Gethsemane, the Christ Jesus' prediction came true. Before the cock crowed twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. So this was the loneliness of the situation preceding the fourth initiation for Jesus and the seventh initiation for Christ. As I say regularly in my newsletters, the fourth initiation is the goal of humanity. It corresponds to the fourth plane of perception, the Buddhic plane, the intuitive plane. And of course, it precedes very soon the fifth initiation, where one can become a master of wisdom if one chooses to go onto that stage. So I do discuss in this, I'm not going to read this out, but Vulcan as the planet, the ruler of the first ray, who is a planet of isolation, and governs the fourth initiation, where the depths of aloneness are plumbed. So, for centuries, due to the influence of the Mars-ruled sixth ray of idealism, and also Mars ruling Aries, of course, and Scorpio, particularly Scorpio, because St. Paul, who was an initiate, was a Scorpio, and DK discusses how through his Scorpio lens, he somewhat brought this more gory, bloody image of the Christ to bear in Christian symbolism. And so it's had that kind of flavor. So for centuries, due to the influence of Mars-ruled sixth ray of idealism, there's been a morbid emphasis laid upon the gruesome crucifixion and death. But the real revelatory key to Easter is the resurrection, very much the keynote of the first ray's co-ruler, Pluto. DK tells us resurrection is the keynote of nature, death is not. Death is only the antechamber of resurrection. Resurrection is the clue to the world of meaning and is the fundamental theme of all world religions, past, present, and future. The resurrection of the spirit in man, in all forms, in all kingdoms, is the objective of the entire evolutionary process. And this involves liberation from materialism and selfishness. And that resurrection, evolution, and death are only preparatory and familiar stages. The Tibetan's words are so multi-layered. You can read this passage now and you might get a different understanding if you read it in 1 year's or 2 years' time. They really require reflection and chewing these passages, chewing the cud, as they say, with the way a cow sits in the paddock and chews the cud. Hence, Easter and the fourth initiation, also known as liberation, or in the East as the crucifixion, is our annual reminder of the goal for humanity as it moves through its various stages of unfoldment. We have another picture here, Paolo Veronese. Italy's soul ray is the sixth ray of devotion and idealism. Hence, many of the Italian artists express some of the most transcendent aspects of Christ's story during the sixth ray cycle that accompanied the Piscean age. The sixth ray comes through Pisces as well. There is, of course, the connection with Italy's ancient Romans who nailed Jesus to the cross. So there you have the resurrection by Veronese. If you look at it long enough and close enough, there's all sorts of stuff going on. In the background, you can see an angel. It's reminiscent of Da Vinci's Annunciation of the Virgin painting, in fact. So that concludes our presentation. We have time for some comments and questions, if any. Feel free to share. Anyway, for those who cannot make it, and for friends of those who are here now, tell them that this webinar will be available on our website, and people can take it in their own particular time zone. In the chat, we have a comment. Oh, thank you, Julie. Yeah, great. And so we will be in the Aries energy for another what? Just over 2 weeks, I think, before we go into Taurus. So one of the things about astrology is to really stay conscious in a daily process. If you have an ephemeris or an astrology program, just to check where the moon is on any particular day, for instance, at least, or a certain planet, if you know the rudiments of your horoscope, where it's going through, such as this very important Mars going through Cancer right now. And it helps us to stay in the moment and to stay conscious, because stuff happens every day as we go into the daily battle, the Kurukshetra, within ourselves and with others. And it really helps us to stay present. If you, not in a fatalistic way by saying, oh, I've got Mars squaring my Pluto today and something like that. Sure, that's good to know, but not to fret about it, but to know that if you may come into certain situations where you really need to be staying in the now. Now, I have failed this many times myself, of course. I've looked at a transit and I thought, whoop, better be careful here. And then when the moment has been sprung upon me during the day, I haven't been ready for it. And I reacted, as opposed to really dealing with it right in the present moment. And yet you learn in retrospect, of course. So we can be too wise for ourselves sometimes, but it does pay to keep an eye on what's going on a daily basis in your lives. Anyway, a couple more things in the chat here. Thank yous, thank you. And Catherine says we have an Aries blue new moon coming up too. When would that be, Catherine? Didn't we just have an Aries new moon? You mean next year? You can chime in on the microphone if you like, or write it. 20th of April. Okay. Oh, okay. So we've got 2 new moons in this month. It's like it's like a blue moon for the full moon, but for the new moon. I didn't notice that. That's quite significant, isn't it? 2 seeds, because the new moon is a seed sowing period, and Aries, of course, is the seed sower. So that's very interesting. Of course, that new moon, that second new moon, will see its harvest in the following sign of Taurus 2 weeks later at the Wesak festival, and an eclipse. Catherine says as well. Great. Well, I'll explore this in the next newsletter. Thanks for those tips there. An eclipse, of course, always electrifies the etheric body of the Earth. It creates a pattern that can last for up to a couple of years. And when transits of planets pass over that point of the eclipse and trigger the horoscope for the eclipse, if you like, during 6 months later or 3 months later or 2 years later, then major things can happen associated with the patterns in that original eclipse chart. So very interesting. Thank you for that, Catherine. Catherine was one of our presenters at the conference, and I urge you to go to our website to listen to her talk. It was very rich about New Zealand, Europe, astrology, and many other things. Julie says, do you have a comment on what the energy is when the new moon precedes the full moon. We are now in what the new moon, we are now switching back. Full moon brings in Taurus and then is followed by the new moon. Well, the new moon is a far more occult period. It's a dark phase of the month, just before we see that thin sliver of the moon in the sky. The new moon is actually about 2 days before that, in the complete darkness, and the few days before that is the balsamic phase, the monthly phase of the moon, which is the complete absence of light of the moon in the sky at all. And so it's a very transformative chrysalis Pluto kind of phase that we experience monthly, in fact. And it's a most occult time to really do some esoteric meditations, to visualize, and it's a seeding period. The new moon is a seeding period. We actually plant, vegetables and so forth on the new moon. That finds its harvest at the full moon, theoretically or symbolically. That's the best approach I can give you to that. We could talk for an hour about that question. So a good question, thank you. All right. Okay, I think that's probably enough for one day. Let us hold this energy of the full moon for the next 10 hours. And if you're awake at the exact time of the full moon, which is on my website, I think it's, let me just scroll up here, then the hour before the exact time is the most potent. It's going to be at 4:34 a.m. GMT or UT Universal Time on April the 6th. So yeah, it's always a profound period. So if you can even get up early, sometimes it's worth doing. But of course, the full moon period will last for another 2.5 days after that exact time. Full moon period is already is always a 5-day period. So we've been in it already for the last 2.5 days. Sometimes I've noticed it even longer before the full moon, like 4 or 5 days before the full moon. You can feel it depending on your sensitivities. So very good, friends. Thank you for attending. Do tell others about the conference resources and videos and these webinars that are available on our website. And I urge you all also to send us the odd donation to help keep things running. So I'll hand it back over to you, Natalia. Thanks very much, everyone, and have a great full moon in Aries.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, everybody. And see you next week. We are also resuming our course and our next meditation. Have a wonderful Easter and Aries festival. Thank you.